except to the very wise among us who are not here today. So, and we've fought really hard to make it something else. The last meeting of City Council to talk about this issue will be on October 15th. So, I mean, essentially what happened was in the wake of Aura Rosser's death, Ann Arbor to Ferguson and Ann Arbor Black Lives.
Never Lives for Black Lives.
Yes, we're both organizing, I just mix up the names sometimes. We're both organizing in the wake of Aura Rosser's death for justice, and then one of the demands that grew out of that was to have a police oversight board in Ann Arbor, an independent police oversight board. That demand was taken to the Human Rights Commission, which is a part of city governance, but it's a group of volunteers who deal with issues of, let's say, social justice in the community. They did an investigation of their own to kind of understand how police oversight boards work. And then somehow, with the city government, they negotiated to have this firm come from Chicago to do, I don't know, I don't even know what to call it. They're grifters, I don't know what this is. But anyway, the city paid $250,000. This firm, Hillard Heights, came and made a recommendation using all this language about community policing and a community police oversight board that would be basically within the police department, with the chief, with the city administrator, with police officers involved. So then community organizers intervened again. They throughout this process of the consulting, and then again to make sure that it would essentially not involve police. This summer, the city impaneled a task force to write a resolution or an ordinance for this board, essentially. The task force members, none of them were current or former law enforcement, and that's in large part due to community organizing. The task force started off actually as quite, let's say, in a reformist vein. They were open to having police on the board. They were not interested in disparaging police individually or collectively. There were a lot of members of the task force that made very compelling experiential or historical arguments, but we're not yet ready to address that in terms of changing the structures of the city, the political structures of the city. And after a contentious summer, which a few people have called bullying, but organizers call it organizing and civilians, the ordinance itself that was presented in early fall to the city council was a bit more radical. Involved the possibility of material support for those victimized, particularly to set up youth commissions and to support youth in participating in this process as voting members. It explicitly eliminated the involvement of police, and it greatly reduced the emphasis of the projects on education, on relationships, on whatever those buzzwords are. And we tried to remove as much of what we could tell of this sort of like neo-fascist rhetoric that's seeping in everywhere. So that the two main goals of the ordinance would be to set up a flow of data to an independent, transparent city body, but it'd be of community volunteers, so that community organizers of all kinds, including abolitionists, would understand something about the nature of policing in Ann Arbor. So we really think one of the main wins of the ordinance as it's written is to create a funnel of data, which in the book, Alex's book mentions many, many times. There's just an unbelievable, limited amount of data all over the country about the kind of nature of policing. So that's number one. And then number two would be a safe and confidential way for victims to come and talk about their experiences. Now, it's not clear in terms of the future repercussions of this, how it would happen, and if there'd be any chance for justice or discipline. Likely that there wouldn't be, because the Ann Arbor contract, the city contract with the police, which I won't go into here, protects them at all levels, including against their own supervisors, which is quite common across the country. Essentially, they're sort of, above the law.
Yeah.
So, although it's been said that the ordinance as written is an attempt to sort of discipline police officers, that's actually not possible in any way whatsoever, including because of federal protections like is it the Garrity protection? I can't remember the name. Yeah, Garrity protections. Police officers have all kinds of special rights. So we really think that it just offers victims a way to come to someone and say what they've experienced. And again, that would build qualitative knowledge, possibly not public knowledge, but among people involved over time about how to be better victims advocates and what are the needs in communities, what are the kinds of things we have to do as community organizers to build power at a local level and also to meet people's needs, which we don't even have that much information about in a kind of broad sense yet. So in lots of ways, we think of the success of this ordinance as feeding community organizers and community members what they need to do work to protect themselves and to take care of each other. There's a lot of other little details in it. The meeting 2 weeks ago, the mayor presented a new version at 5 o'clock the night of the meeting. it had been posted, but he revised it heavily. So essentially, no one in the public, after 10 months of organizing, had any access to the document. Then, of course, through whatever backroom shenanigans already happened, his ordinance passed in the middle of the night. There was one person that spoke in support of the mayor's work. One. Community members have been showing up, organizers have been showing up completely in support of many of the things in the ordinance, with some qualifications. So the next meeting, it's hard to say what's going to happen there. We'll be doing organizing over the next week. If you're involved, if you're on the HVDSA list, or if you'd like to be added to a list in the next week to receive updates, be happy to share. I think what's going to be happening is we'll be pushing for amendments that will essentially return the mayor's ordinance to the original. The challenge here, as Alex addresses in the book, and as others have talked about, is the question of like how do we have, in a week now, amass the kind of political power we need to do that work. And it's going to be challenging, if not possibly, or if not impossible. But that's kind of where we are with that project. If people have questions, of course, HVDSA have been one of a number of their members, the chair, and others have been essentially part of the integral kind of organizing coalition all summer. I'm in a group called Collective Against White Supremacy. There's another group, Transforming Justice Washington, which really led this work. Some of their core organizers started off in Arbor to Ferguson and other groups after Orwell's death. And then the Graduate Employees Organization, the local union is involved. So that's where we are. We're kind of, somehow stuck in this reformist vortex, but doing our best. And the things that you've mentioned tonight, a number of organizers stuck in this reformist vortex with me. That's what they've been saying. They can't wait to get out so they can go back to doing lots of things you mentioned. So I appreciate the feedback. I don't think you should feel bad about coming into a community and offering generous feedback to organizers. It's much appreciated. And hopefully we'll be back to some of that work soon once this is over. But if you'd like to hear more or get involved, reach out to Matt and Eric. Thank you.
Thank you. And let me just one more actually.
Yeah. So very quickly, other people maybe want to leave or something, I don't know. So I produce this radio show called Rust Belt Evolution Radio, which people should listen to if you want. I'm not going to tell you to listen to it, but it's online at rustbeltradio.org. It's also on iTunes, SoundCloud. It's also on different radio stations. So if you happen to be in Nashville, sometimes you can listen to it in North Carolina, whatever. So rustbeltradio.org, you guys can find us online. I guess some people listening,
Yes.
Awesome. And the show actually emerged in the wake of the prison strike. In 2016, it's the largest coordinated, basically, action in the history of the United States in terms of prisoners. And another group emerged out of that called Michigan Abolition and Prisoner Solidarity. And what we have done since then, since 2016, was, which I'm also part of, was to, in a sense, help people that were in solitary confinement in the wake of the strike here in Michigan, support them in whatever way we can through letters, but also other forms of support. I know there's a camera here. But anyway, so the other forms of support that allowed us to, people were actually able to come out after a year being put in solitary confinement, actually on May 1st, 2017. And since then, we've created, we're building a network of comrades with those on the inside to support them in whatever activity they take, right? And so if you are interested in supporting prison rebels in Michigan and beyond, you can visit michiganabolition.org. You can also just come talk to me afterwards. And part of what we also did was getting out some of the stories about what went down inside in Kinross. So it's a prison in the Upper Peninsula where almost 200 people that were part of the prison strike in 2016 were shipped out to other prisons for solitary confinement, like I mentioned earlier. But basically, we were able to get out their stories. We interviewed 5 of them. So this came out also through a radio show. So anyway, if you're interested in supporting one end of the partial state apparatus, which is the enormous prison system in the U.S., particularly in Michigan, you can come talk to me afterwards. You can find us online at michiganabolition.org.
So I was able to, I've been able with my publisher to arrange discounted copies of the books, basically for organizers and students. So I have some $10 copies out, and I'm happy to stick around and sign them. And I'm trying to be a hub for a lot of the organizing around the country, and you can follow me on Twitter at @Vitale. Thank you.
Yeah.